Hey everyone, welcome to my second Pacifism community commentary. Today's episode comes courtesy of Callum Grant. He's a guy I'm sure will be familiar to any regular YouTube Pacifism viewers. He's put out several high quality Geometry Wars videos over the last few months. And he sent me a 3.5 billion Pacifism run to commentate over. So big thanks to him for doing that. Please, if you enjoy this video, if you're interested in Geometry Wars, do check out his channel. Before I get onto the run itself, just a couple of things I need to quickly say. One, I'm going to be away for pretty much all of November, and I won't have any internet access, so I won't be replying to any messages or anything like that. But if anyone wants to send me their own run for this series, do go ahead and message me, and I'll get back to you once I get back into internet land. And I think I said before that I only wanted videos of around 300 million or more, but really there's no need to have a limit, because I think there's plenty to say for even a not so high score. So yeah, whatever your score is, if you're interested, if you want me to commentate over your gameplay, then go ahead and message me. But yeah, so if you don't hear from me during November, it's not because I've turned my back on this channel or anything. I obviously won't be uploading any videos either. It's just because I'm away for a little while, but I'll be back and pissed. So let's get on with the video. So as you can hear maybe, we've got the actual gameplay music on my channel for first and probably only time today. That's pretty cool. And you'll notice that Callum Grant has an interesting way of starting. I tend to just like start and kill the blues and get the geom, but he lets the blues build up and waits until the gate is in a technically perfect place before detonating it. See there, he waited until it turned right into a cloud before going for it. Now at this stage that's not at all necessary, because the cloud's so light there's no need. And by the way, to any new viewers, I tend to call the blues clouds. I just do. So, but I like that because it means straight away he's constantly practicing how to hit the gates in the most effective way. It reminds me of Street Fighter players who, between rounds, will still be like absolutely smacking the buttons on their stick. Not saying need to, but because they're practicing, I guess, how to plink, which is a technical term I won't go into. But I just think it shows he's very mindful of how to hit the gates, and you'll see that certainly for the first couple of 100 million, where he'll minimise, after he hits the gate, he'll minimise the movement of moving away from the cloud, which will then ensure it doesn't spread out by following him in an outward direction, and he'll maximise the movement into the cloud, which is allowed by the explosion. And those two movements, the absence of movement away from the cloud and the presence of movement into the cloud, will ensure that a cloud isn't stretched out, it's constantly bunched in on itself. So I just stopped it here to point out the geom at this stage. It's just under 100 million, and it's on 2,200 geom. That's exactly the benchmark I always aim for. I look for 2,000 at 80 million and 2,200 at 100 million. There's no particular reason for that, that's just what I've noticed I tend to get when I get a big run. And so that way of hitting the gates, as I've said many times before, firstly it just bunches the cloud up real nice and tight and dense, so they're not occupying too much of the screen, and more of them are getting killed when you hit the gate. And by moving it into the cloud, you collect a lot of geom, which is why he's got such a high geom count at this point. Onwards, dear friends. So really nothing to kind of critique at this point. It's a textbook example of how I think, like I say, the game should be played. And if anyone's ever confused by what I'm talking about when I say about the correct technique, what I believe is the correct technique of hitting gates, it's right here. And you'll notice the sort of elaborate movements he makes sometimes when he's preparing to hit the gate. That's to ensure the cloud will drift into the best place where you can get the maximum damage from the orange parts of the gates. Now then, this is an interesting situation right here. And by interesting I mean extremely dangerous. You see he's in the corner, which is where you never want to be, and I've got a horrible feeling he's about to go further into the corner and hit those two gates. And the reason that's dangerous is, of course, the blues are homing in on that corner, and I think the escape route by going down and to the right and up through the middle, it's going to get closed off. If the blues now spawn in that bottom left corner, then he's definitely going to die. I probably would have gone up at this point, left those 2 gates in the corner and gone for the cluster of gates instead. But I totally respect the decision that he does make not to, because the score is only 250 million, which, as you saw at the start, his previous scores, it's not a big issue getting to this point. And so if he dies, he'll be like, yeah, you know, whatever. And by going for this, he gets to save those gates up there, because they're positioned nicely, the gates, if they turn the right way in the bottom. If they turn the correct way, he'll be able to demolish most of this cloud, and he'll be able to use those gates for another purpose. And it's a bit easier too, because you're not sure how those gates at the top are going to spin. They might all go in the wrong position, so I wouldn't have done that, but that's because I'm not playing well enough at the moment to be getting regular 200 millions. If I was, then maybe I would. So sometimes you just got to roll the dice, and if you get lucky, then you're in a good position, as always. And so he takes the risk, pays off, and now he's in a pretty good position. Lots of gates, nice geom. Gets to go back on himself there to get a little more, but here's decision time. There's still quite a few gates to the left of the map. The question is, do you try and get to the left to try and do some damage with those gates? There's what, 6-7 gates in that area, or do you go to the right and use those 3 or 4 gates to do some damage? Now the advantage of going to the right, I think, is that it's probably be quite a simple situation. There's only a few gates, so they're not likely to cross over one another, and you don't want to be making life hard for yourself at any point during pacifism. But I think I would have gone to the left in the situation, because if you can make the most of all those gates, if you can really work them and do maximum damage, then you'll get a lot of geom, because it's all so like tight, it's such a close situation. You're bound to be in the same proximity as the geom when it's released, and you'll do a lot of damage. And although you might die, it's still quite early days. It's 400 million, and the whole point of the first billion, I think, is just to try. You can't win. You can't get to number 1 in the first billion, but you can give yourself a foundation to get a massive score if you try and get a massive geom and manipulate the blues so they're really dense and wound up on one another. The problem is, if you go to the right now, then you're just naturally going to stretch out the blues, because at this stage there'll be different kinds of blues, like they'll be in existence for different amounts of time, and the longer a blue is alive, the faster it gets. So right now there'll be blues moving at different speeds. If you shoot towards the right hand side, then naturally the ones that have been alive longer will go after you faster, and the slower ones will remain at the back, creating like a line of blues which is spread out, and it's going to be harder to kill. It's going to start occupying more space. It's just not a good situation. You want the blues wound up in a tiny ball. So I would have gone to the left in this situation, but I mean, it's a split-second decision, and Callum goes to the right. So let's see what happens. So if you look, it kind of gets all a bit spread out, and there's not really great damage done there. And I think that maybe gets in Callum's head here, because now he's not getting quite such. Those last couple of gates were good, but ones before that weren't very big impacts. I think quite a lot of geom went missing. And if we stop it now, if you look at the geom compared to the score, it's good. It's just hit 5,000, but I think because his technique is so very, very good, I think he should be getting possibly a higher geom at this point. I mean, it should be hitting 5,000. Maybe while it's still in the 500 millions. And that's difficult, but I think he's clearly good enough to be doing that. And I think what happened there was the blues got stretched out, and I don't know about you, when I see that happen, my heart kind of sinks. I think, oh bollocks, I've lost control a little bit. And I think in the subsequent gates, the technique just went a little bit missing. So he's still in a very good position. That's the first decision I would have done differently. I would have tried to just remain in the gates, and it's more difficult. But I think if you can keep the blues in the same position and not spread them out, then you should do that. But anyway, he quickly recovers, and these are all good hits. The gates don't move very kindly at all, but he's still positioning them well. Could have maybe darted a little bit more there. But those are all nice hits. Now here, what I think should be good if it's a horrible situation there where you got those gates all pointing in the wrong direction. I think if he just, how am I going to do this? I'll show that again at super slow-mo. I think after hitting each of these gates, there's just enough room to dart back a little bit more and just push the cloud back on itself. Each of those I'd like to see more of a jutting movement, like you see most of the other times when he's hitting gates. Even though it feels worthless because the gates are positioned so badly. There, that was a nice dart back on itself. I think to make that step into the truly massive scores, you need to be always making those little movements back into the cloud. And I think even when the gates are positioned like so terribly, you've still got to be doing it. And like there. And I mean, it's something he's aware of. It's just something you need to try and do constantly. Those are really nice hits, and like I said, I'm being very critical just because it's such a good run. There's not much to be critical of. I think it's just a case of applying the technique a little bit more diligently. Now here, this is a rare situation at 1.7 billion. Here you've got a bit of time to really think about what you want to do, and you've got those two gates, which obviously ones you're going to go for next, with the aim of suppressing the cloud a bit more. Now what Callum ends up doing is going to the left of that gate and hitting it, but if it was me, I'd take this as a real opportunity to position the gate so it points really deep into the cloud, and to do that I would fly to its right in quite a kind of extravagant way, because the gate is turning in the right direction. It's like the opposite of what I was saying before, whereas every gate you need to be making little movements back into the cloud to keep it going back on itself. Here it's a chance to make one gate really count and really smash a massive swathe of it. And by going to the right, a massive swathe of the cloud, sorry, and by moving to the right, you'll pull the cloud with you, thus complementing the movement of the gate, and it'll be like a perfect storm of destruction. Instead, he moves to the left, and it's just not quite as damaging, as you'll see. See, that wasn't very damaging, and I think it could have been. And ironically, in the next, when you go up now here, that's the decision that should have been made, I think, previously. That's a really nice hit. Pulled the blues with him. Bammo, that's really nice, and that's what I think should have been done previously. Now we've got another difficult situation coming up. This is difficult, several gates, but I think there's room. I mean, it's very difficult, but I think here he needs to be making more of those gates than he does. He kind of just flies through them. Whereas I think if you use the technique, like in the first couple of 100 million, and really milk it, go back into the cloud, make as much damage as possible, force the blues back on themselves. It's so tight. You need to keep really cool in this situation, but I think it can be done. So you can see they didn't really get the geom or manipulate the clouds as that situation allows you to. And from this point on, to be honest, the technique does kind of go missing. That backwards movement back into the cloud doesn't really happen. And although it's very difficult because of the momentum of the cloud, it makes it very difficult to judge these things. It's just something all more so when it becomes difficult, that movement is what will buy you the space to survive in, as very hard as it is. It's nice flying. This is a really unfortunate death, but these things, do happen. But yeah, there you go. So I hope this hasn't sounded too critical. I really admire Callum Grant's play style. It's how I like to see the game play. I think it's how the game needs to be played to do well. And all I think he needs to do to improve is just to believe more in that technique when he's under the big pressure from around 2 billion onwards, to keep moving into the cloud, keep darting into it, keep doing all the things he was doing earlier in the run. And I've no doubt he'll be challenging for the top spots. And the more under pressure you are, the more that technique of staying in the blues, keeping near to them, pushing them back on themselves, making sure the fast and the slow blues are all occupying the same place. I think the more that helps you, it keeps the cloud under control. And yeah, so that's the main thing. I hope it's been helpful. I'll talk to you guys again probably in a month or so. Take it easy.